But the Premier League was brilliant. Now it's a rod for your own back, trust me. You haven't got time to like recuperate. So if you start off bad, mentally wise, it must do their heads in, because you know you can be number one in the world and it takes it out of you. It can either make a career or ruin it, to be honest.
I'm going to get you to name your 8 Premier League lineup of all time. It can be
Who
any
would love?
player
Yeah.
of any point.
My first pick, I'd have to put.
Hello, welcome along to the very latest edition of the Tungsten Talk here at the MODUS Super Series with the 16-time champion of the world, Phil the Power Taylor. Today we're going to be talking about the Premier League, the importance of it, and well, how it has become one of the real big tournaments within the sport of darts. Now, Phil, you were involved in the Premier League right from the very beginning. You were involved in the first one back in 2005. First of all, when you got the phone call to say we're launching a Premier League of darts, a tour where we're going to be going across the country, what did you think of that?
I got the phone call off Barry Hearn first. He says, Phil, I've got an idea, because Barry's always thinking, again, he's always pushing forward, Barry is. Probably one of the hardest working men I've ever met in my career, in my life. You know, when I used to phone him as my manager, he'd be in Japan. And then 2 days later I'd phone him and he'd be in Canada. You know, promoting the sport, try and get different sponsorships, try and get different countries involved. He was that's how Barry is. You know, he wouldn't do a deal over the phone, he'd come out and see you. You know, his motto was get up, dress up and turn up. Mm-hmm. That was his motto. And when he mentioned it to me, I thought, this ain't going to work. Mm-hmm. Not a chance. I thought, we're going to do arenas and things like that. Yeah, we'll fill them. I thought, no, you won't. No, so I was a bit apprehensive. The beginning of the Premier League was brilliant. I loved it because the schedule wasn't as hard as what it is now. You know, this day and age is not. When I was younger, I could have done it, but not now. I could never have done 17 weeks if you win it, and then play tournaments midweek and at weekends as well. You'd never be at home. I mean, when I was playing, I used to have 2 suitcases, one with all fresh, clean clothes, and then take one with me, wear them, bring them back, get them all washed, clean, ready, and then take my new suitcase with me. You know, that's how you lived, living out of a suitcase. But the Premier League was brilliant. Now it's a rod for your own back, trust me, because you know you can be number one in the world and it takes it out of you. It can either make a career or ruin it, to be honest.
And when it began, it wasn't quite selling out the O2 Arena like it does in the modern day. It was starting off maybe at more modest venues, maybe like leisure centres and maybe venues which kind of had more like 700-800 people as opposed to 10,000-12,000.
Yeah. The first one was the King's Hall in Stoke. We filled it, and the atmosphere was good, but it wasn't a venue like what they do now. I remember playing Barney at Sheffield. It was 16,000 there, and it was like a pop concert. I turned around, I thought, wow, this I honestly could never believe it. That was the Paul me and Barney had at that time. It was brilliant, and I think I beat him. Or did we draw? We might have drew actually. It was great, brilliant.
You mentioned the element of draws. Obviously, originally it was just one league table. You played one game a night. What was it interesting as well, having the dynamic of draws, because there's no other tournament where that happens.
Yeah. Because you only got 1 point then. I think it was strange. Yeah, because all you wanted to do was qualify. You know, every week first after the breaks, 2 would drop out, wouldn't they? Mm-hmm. Then was it 8? Was it 10 players wanted, and 2 would drop out. So it was ever at the bottom. When in the practice room, like now the practice room's changed. Apparently it's very quiet. Mm-hmm. I've not been in since I retired, but they say now nobody really talks. They all put the headphones on, which is the right thing to do really, and concentrate and practice properly. But when we were there, especially when Adrian was in and Gary Anderson and myself, we never shut up. And then Chizzy come and have a practice and whatnot. Michael was chatty. Barney was quiet. Mervyn King was playing, he was quiet. Kevin Paint, if he was there, he was quite quiet and concentrated. But me, Adrian and Gary Anderson, we never shut up taking the mickey out of each other. So it was nice, it was a good practice room. But again, it's all changed now. But the Premier League now is going to be a real noose around the neck. They're going to love it, they'll love the prize money because it's big prize money. But it's a difficult one. It's the hardest one to win because it's not over 2 weeks like the World Championships 2 weeks. This is over 4 months.
What is it like to play in those massive arenas? Because I'd imagine, as obviously when you play at the Circus and you play at the Alexander Championship, you're playing the biggest games at the World Championship. But I can imagine it's a different kind of buzz when you're playing in arenas where there's 10, 12,000, do they feel like different matches, if you understand where I'm coming from?
The bigger the crowd, believe it or not, when it's smaller, you can hear a lot more because they're more closer to you. But the big arenas, it become like a buzz. Bzzz, so it didn't really bother you as much. It's when it's quiet, when everybody's concentrating and watching, and then you get somebody shout out, "Wah," and then you can hear that, and you're like, oh. Especially if you're on a 9 dart or something and somebody shouts out. But when there's like 16,000 people shouting, you can't hear it. You can hear it, but it's just a buzz, just a bzzz. So it's a lot easier with more people, believe it or not.
When you do the walk-ons at the real big arenas in the Premier League, do you have that feeling of a rock star?
Do you? No, not really, because you're more concentrating on your opponent now. So all you're practicing in the back room, all you're messing around or whatever, but now you're serious. So it's a bit like a boxing match. You get 2 boxers. Now they're all jolly and having a laugh and everything else, but as soon as they say, right, you're going to walk on, you see the serious face come on. So that's what you have to do.
And as you mentioned, the progression to arenas, there were certain points which really grew the Premier League, particularly during your career. The first one was when Raymond van Barneveld made that move over from the BDO to the PDC. Was that the first moment when he moved over and he signed to play in the Premier League that you thought, this is a competition that's got legs to it?
Yeah. I think he won it the first year, didn't he? Played bloody brilliant, the lad did. He was definitely a big asset because Sky got straight onto that. It was Taylor versus Barneveld. We even had a big clock. A countdown clock saying 17 days, 5 hours and 30 seconds to Taylor's playing Barneveld. It was dead strange, like, and it made us then very, big household names where everywhere you went then you were recognised. Everywhere, even if we went China, people knew who you were. So it really elevated the sport, Barney coming over.
Elevated the sport and also elevated players as well. And for certain players who may only get one opportunity to play the Premier League in their lives, they could do a number of different things. It raises their profile, but also what it can give to them in terms of financial security, what it can do to further their careers, whether that be maybe later on the exhibition circuit. To play the Premier League once, particularly in the modern era, it feels like a real badge of honour.
It is. It's a strange one as the Premier League because you've got to play well every week. For like 16 weeks, 17 weeks now. So if you're down that bottom of that league and you've got to play for so many weeks, like, 14 or 15 weeks, it's a crippler because it's so bad for their confidence. I've seen a lot of, when I was younger, then if you had a little bit of a drop in form, it didn't last very long because you could go home and you could practice and try and put it right. You'd have a break from the darts for a couple of weeks or a month, where now they haven't got time to recuperate. So if you start off bad, mentally wise, it must do their heads in because you know you're up against it because you haven't got time to put it right. So I feel sorry for anybody who's at the bottom of the league. They're going to feel it this year, which you've seen players qualify for it and then not qualify again. It's about longevity. This game is, so it's going to be very, very difficult for them. But the cream will come out on top, I suppose.
How did you deal with the rough and tumble of week in, week out playing in the Premier League? Did you try and find a way that made sure that you were playing week in, week out, playing to a high level, but also you could keep the stamina for the course?
I rested a lot. As I say, I'd go down for breakfast early, I'd have a shower early, and then I'd go back to bed and have another sleep again. Try and get, and if I could, have a little kip in the afternoon. Try and keep getting half an hour. With me, at my age, I can have half an hour, a little power nap, and feel like I've had 8 hours sleep. So I was wide awake and I'd be right for it. And then the crowds would get you going as well because the crowds were very, very boisterous and very noisy. And there were certain areas, because what they used to do with me, which they might do with Luke, you'll be playing the player from that area. So if they play in Holland, you'll probably play Michael. If he plays in the northeast, he'll probably play, let's say Gary Anderson, or Scotland, play Gary Anderson. And if they're in Cardiff, they'll probably play Gavin Price and so on. So that's what they used to do, and it creates a great atmosphere for the dart. Everybody's going there because the best player in the world's playing the local lad. So the atmosphere and the names used to get called. I know footballers get called names, but trust me, I've been called things I don't even know what they're calling me. I'm smiling, thinking, I don't even know what you mean. It must be something horrible, but let it be. Barry used to say, think about the money, son. Think about the money. I said, I'm thinking about it, yeah. But I haven't got time to spend it. That's the problem.
Just don't Google any of the names, will you? And I suppose...
I wouldn't even be able to spell them.
And then in terms of how a player, as you say, we mentioned dealing with the diary, dealing with the stamina. What do you make of some players that say that the Premier League can be a little bit of a distraction to this?
Oh, yeah. Premier League's a massive tournament. I'd put the Premier League next to the World Championship, really. You know, Blackpool's my favourite tournament. Well, the World Championships is always going to be the best one because you're world champion. But Blackpool's my favourite venue because it's close to my home. It's summer. You know, the World Championships is great, but it's winter. So you're stuck in. You know, you can't go out anywhere. Whereas Blackpool, because I had a lovely lodge, I could go sit on the decking, lie in the sun a little bit, you know, and relax, and got my own bed, my own TV, and my own kitchen. It was lovely up there. But I'd say the Premier League, it's so difficult. You know, and if you're flying on a Wednesday, you're playing on a Thursday, and plus you'll have press when you get there, you know, media stuff. Sometimes on a Thursday morning, you'd have to do media things, you know, for time, and signing things and meeting people, because there might be potentially new sponsors. So there's a lot more to darts now than people realise. You know, it's not about they think we just turn up and play, put your shirt on, put your shoes on, get going and play. Nothing like that, trust me. And it's not like that for a footballer. You know, they have to train every day. They have to eat properly. You know, I know, because a lot of the times I've been playing over the years in different football grounds, and the managers have been telling me, you know, how the players now have to have breakfast at the club, so they know they're eating properly, they're having the right foods, then they have the dinner, and each meal is set by the nutritionist. So a goalkeeper would have more protein and more carbs than say a striker would. So everything's worked out to the pinpoint. This is what I'm saying now, that I can see this happening in darts, where you know, if they earn big money, take a chef with you, and get an Airbnb where you've got a kitchen, and everything pinpointed properly to your energy levels and to your blood type, or you know, if you need to lose a bit of weight, you know, he'll do it for you, and you'll be eating properly, so you feel good and energetic.
I want to talk about the format now, because it's a little bit different to the format that you played in when you were a player. It's a knockout tournament played over 16 weeks, but it's a tournament every single week. How do you think you would have dealt with that?
I'd have been all right with it. Yeah, I was fine. I think the longer games suited me anyway. You know, I was all right with semi-finals and last eights and finals. So I'd have coped all right with it. Later on, towards the latter end of my career, I'd struggled, because I wouldn't have the energy levels to play all night like that. So that would have been a bit of a downfall for me.
As a person that now watches darts on the other side of it, is it something that you would prefer to watching a tournament in an evening where you see a winner as opposed to maybe 5 matches in a league?
No, I prefer the old one, you know, the original one, where there's 10 players and then 2 players drop out. I prefer that one, and players only play one because they do enough. They'll burn them out, see. I think one game a night is enough now.
And it's interesting because there's some people that mention that because of the way the draws work out, okay, everyone will play each other in a quarter-final once like they did do in the previous format, but say the same players are successful week in, week out, say Luke and Luke, for example, they keep making it to the final, that perhaps there could just be a little bit of repetitive strain. Is there a possibility that we can maybe see too much of players playing against
That's what happened with me and Barney. You know, it was great because we didn't play each other for a few months and everybody was looking forward to it. You know, even in the streets, can't wait for you to play Barney in November. You know, really looking forward to it. And then it was every other week we were playing each other. And people got fed up with it then. Where, you know, the newness of it's gone.
Is that fine line where obviously the PDC will want to have the best players, playing the best players on a regular basis, but is that fine line as to how often you want to see that battle?
Yeah, it's keeping the interest going, isn't it? It's keeping the interest going for the viewer at home. You know, I mean, I play Barney sometimes on a Thursday and I was playing him again on the Saturday. So, well, I've seen that the other day. So it takes the shine off it a little bit. For me, it does anyway.
Let's talk about the good of the Premier League. What was the thing about that tournament that you liked the most?
It was good money, first of all. It was good for your sponsors, which was great. Because you're not just playing about yourself, because I had people working for me, so it was good to keep paying their wages as well. Great practice. The only thing really for me, what I didn't really like is the travelling. I never have enjoyed travelling. I don't mind once I get there, but that little bit in the middle I didn't like for some reason. You know, when we're going down to Plymouth, say, great, I loved it when I was there, I loved Plymouth, but that's 5-hour drive down there, I hated it. And if you hit any traffic, you think, oh no, that's going to put an hour and a half on the journey. So that was the only bugbear for me, was the travelling.
I want to talk about the O2. First of all, what was it like to play at that arena? And how important is it for darts to have a major tournament there?
First time at the O2 was a bit like when I first played at the MGM. Because Ricky Hatton phoned me, you know, he was in Vegas before me. And he said, Phil, you got your name up in lights. So I got my name up in lights, you know, in the Vegas, which was massive for me. I said, have you had your name up in lights yet? He said, not yet, no, but I will, which he did. And it was strange. It was, I mean, you used to walk across the walkway from New York, and there's a big television screen with showing the darts. I'm thinking, we've made it here, we've done it. Vegas, you know what I mean? But I loved the Premier League, I really enjoyed it. So, and I did all right with it as well. But the O2, to go in, was electrifying. And when you go like in the MGM, where we go, where the practice rooms are, in the corridors behind the arena, there's all photographs and pictures framed pictures on the wall of everybody that's been there. And you'll see like Bon Jovi and Elvis Presley's been there, or somebody in all the different rock bands. Taylor Swift, you know, would have been on the same stage as what you're about to play in. And Sylvester Stallone had been in there. I think one of the Rocky films was filmed in there. It's fantastic. And the O2 is the same. So you walk down the corridor, and they've got a dartboard there, and they've got me and Barney, pictures of me and Barney on the wall. Because I've seen some of the boxers now and again when they're walking on, like Joshua, and you see the dartboard on the wall, thinking, I know it's practice. I know exactly where he is now, what room he was in. And Beyonce's on the wall. You know, it's ever so strange.
When you see those sorts of people on that wall, and you're walking in and you're doing your job as an equal to them, does that inspire?
It's how can I say? It's a strange feeling, really. It's like I'm up there now. You know what I mean? I'm up with the big stars, because you're playing on a massive arena. You're playing in, you know, probably the best arenas in the world, and it is inspiring. You think, right, you better play well now, Taylor. You don't go up there and make yourself look a fool. So that's what it's like. It is lovely, like, yeah. It's great when you go home and you got something to talk about. You know, I'm going to have a game of cards with the lads on Sunday. Duck, you all right? Yeah, we say duck where I live. So, yeah, get yourself off. I can do my cleaning then. Hey, guess who I passed in there? Guess who was in the audience? Guess who, you know, was on the wall? It's brilliant. It's great. It really is. I've got some great memories. And I've also got memories I can't remember.
This is my favourite part of this particular Tungsten Talk, because we're going to get you to name your 8 Premier League line of all time. It can be any player of any point. We'll go through it one by one. We'll go through some names. I'd love to know why you'd like to have them in there. And, of course, you can have your discussion at home as well about that too. Let's go to the very start. Are we going to assume that Phil Taylor's going to be in Phil Taylor's
Phil Taylor will be in.
Why would Phil Taylor be in?
Because I'm the best. I'm the greatest. My first pick, I'd have to put Eric in. Eric in, because he'd make the practice room great. You know, he'd get the players wound up, where he'd make the tournament exciting. He'd be great with the media, as you know. And at his best, he'd probably win it. Second one would be John Lowe. Because John, I used to love just watching John Lowe. You know, any player, some of the older players who played John at his best was just absolutely brilliant. He was, honestly. He's one of the nicest throwers I've ever seen. Dennis Priestley, I'd have to put Dennis in. Because he was one of my biggest rivalries. So he'd motivate me again as well, because I used to love playing Dennis. Barney, I love playing against. I still, even though I've retired now, but I still loved to play Barney. You know, I loved playing him. It was just always had that rivalry, even though we're good friends now. I mean, we're friends then, but the rivalry between us was. But we always seemed to like playing each other. Even in an exhibition match, we still wanted to smash each other into the oblivion. Another one I'd love to see, which always puts a smile on my face, is Jockey. Now, I want these players to be playing at the best. You know, Jockey was so unpredictable. You know, he was a little bit like Paul Gascoigne. You know, he was genius when he was on song, and then he had a game where he wasn't so clever. You know, whichever Jockey Wilson turned up. He had the Jockey Wilson that turned up, you had a game on your hands. He was that good, you know. And then I'd have to put in Luke Littler, just for the impact that he is, and he deserves to be in as well. Who else would I like? I mean, I like them all, really.
Is there anyone perhaps from the modern age that you put in?
I've just said Luke Littler. I'd probably put Luke Humphries in as well, because I think he's great. Not just a good player, he's a lovely lad. He's got a great personality, but he also, I like his interviews. He talks a lot of sense, does Luke Humphries. He's dead down to earth, he's very humble, and I like him, so I would definitely put Luke in. What's that, about 6?
You're at 6 now.
About 6. Who can I say now? I mean, there's that many players that I've really admired over the years. I love winners. I do. I love anybody that's got that winning mentality, which Barney has. The biggest winning mentality that I've ever met in my career is Michael Van Gerwen. So I've got to put Michael in, because it wouldn't be the same if I've got nobody to take the mickey out of. And he used to take the mickey out of me as well. So we had good fun backstage. Yeah, he was good. He was lovely to play against, and also he's a player that makes you get up and practice. You know, if you're thinking, I've got Michael next week, you better get ready, because he can play. So definitely put Michael in. I like the older players as well, when I'm thinking. I tell you one player I really, really liked when I first started, and I used to watch him, and when he was on song, he was brilliant. He didn't win as much as what he should have done, was Big Cliff.
Lazarenko.
I love Big Cliff Lazarenko. I loved his style, the way he played. Leighton Rees would be another one that I loved. I'd like seeing Leighton, because his career was more or less finished when I started. Even though he was still captain of Wales, he wasn't the same player. But they moved from 7'6" with Leighton. Leighton was the best player in the world at 7'6". But when they moved it to 7'9", he wasn't the same player. Like I was good at 7'9". If they'd have moved it to 8 foot, I wouldn't have been able to win. Not a chance, because I played in the News of the World. It just wasn't my game. Alan Evans would be another player that I'd have loved seeing at his best. But Cliff Lazarenko, definitely. Yeah, I'd have put Cliff in.
So of those players that you've picked, what qualities do you think they would have in that Premier League lineup? What kind of dynamic do you think
at the best, it'd have been excitement every week. John Lowitz's best was majestic. He was absolutely brilliant to watch. Bob Anderson's another player who was, on his day was brilliant. Dennis Prissy was one of the hardest players you could ever wish to play. Could not just being a slow player, he was so good. His treble 18s were the best I've ever seen. His finishing was brilliant. His 180s were brilliant, but his darts were so small, I don't know how he got them in. So he was one of the most difficult players you could ever beat. Michael's the same. Then would I leave Adrian Lewis out? No, I wouldn't. So I'd have to have at least 10 players in the Premier League, because Adie's great fun to be around, and he can play, and he's but he's so easy to wind up. That's why I say, what's this? I'll get him going. What's this? And I'll say one thing. Are you cheating again, Lewis? And he'd go, bang, got you. And he'd look at me like. So.
Who wins the Phil Taylor Premier League?
Me.
I knew you were going to say that. Phil, it's been an absolute...
Who knows with them players? You never know. You never know.
Put it this way, it would be blockbuster, wouldn't it?
It would be brilliant, because all of them on the day would be so... Eric could be so difficult to beat. Because the modern player, I've never met anybody like Eric Bristow, trust me. He would wind them up. They would all have... If there was no headphones, he would wind them up. Now they'd have them turned up full volume for Eric, trust me. He'd have give it to him.
Well, Phil, thank you very much for your time as ever here on the Tungsten Talk here at the MODUS Super Series.